he was asked about gun control, and we know the shooting that happened in Virginia just at the end of last week, and what his approach would be. And of course, he said he wants a gun licensing program. And the one thing that happens on Hardball is Chris Matthews will ask you follow-up questions and interrupt you and ask you a follow-up question.
Yes.
So at least he fleshes things out a little bit more. So he asked him how would he go about that process. It's easy to say, yeah, gun control, gun licensing. So he went in.
How would it work? Would everybody who has a gun in their house call in the ATF and register? How would it work?
Look, I think the most important thing is what we do going forward. So retroactively is going to be tougher, right? I've got a couple antique rifles I brought back from Afghanistan. You couldn't fire them if you tried. I don't know how you go about registering those.
What about a regular guy a person owns a shotgun? Should they register it?
Well, I think at the point of sale, there should be, I mean, again,
but they own them.
I got to register my car.
We own 400 million guns now.
So let's at least get it right going forward.
So the future guns get registered.
Yeah.
But not the ones that we have now.
Look, let's figure out a system.
Have you changed on this? Because I thought you said a while ago that you believed in licensing of all guns.
Look, I think we can start on a go-forward basis. Then we'll have a system we can actually use to look at what we can do retroactively too. But at a minimum, if we're not doing it at the point of sale for purchase,
how many like to see that?
We can begin.
Matthews, I'm just talking to myself. Oh, I just answered my own question. What do you think? I thought you were, anyway, commercial break. Like,
so, you know, it's crazy because as we were watching that, I said, God, I can't stand Chris Matthews. And it's not because of what he's actually saying, it's the way he says it, right? Because the follow-up questions are important. I actually really respect the fact that he's asking follow-ups. It's just the way he interrupts loudly before Buttigieg can finish his point. Like, I want to hear what his solutions are.
And yet it's a perfect training ground for you know who, right? Like going up against Chris Matthews is actually like kind of, I think it's one of the harder hosts to be interviewed by in all of these town halls, because precisely he does interrupt you, tons of follow-up questions, he's pretty good, and he's super Trumpy in that way, loud and abrasive and gonna interrupt, and obviously armed with fact instead of, not armed with fact rather. But like Buttigieg didn't ever not shut him down, but sort of assert himself.
That's a good point, yeah, because look, I don't know, maybe it's misleading, but the fact that he didn't assert himself, to me, demonstrated that he hasn't put too much thought behind this topic, right? I don't know, I could be wrong.
That's what I think got exposed in that one clip. That was the thing that stuck out to me. He said, oh yeah, gun licensing program. And he said, so what about the ones already here? And I think he mentioned how many hundreds of millions of guns, I can never remember the number, that we currently own in the country. He goes, well, going forward. He goes, well, how are you gonna control the ones going forward? What about the ones retroactively? Because also Buttigieg did make a comparison to being like, you're licensing your car, you buy a 1978 Cadillac, you still gotta register that.
Right.
So, even though it's old, you bought it. So it's the thing. So what if you already have a 78 Cadillac that's just been sitting in the backyard and it was out of the system? You gotta put it in the system before you put it on the road. So he wasn't ready for those types of follow-ups because we don't have 500 million plus Cadillacs in the backyard in America, it's not the same thing.
I'm just kind of struck by this topic and this moment. I think that if Buttigieg really wanted to set himself apart, he would, and this sounds callous, but I mean, like, a national tragedy just happened. What do you got? Make it bold, be heartfelt about it, put it out there, stand apart, and change the conversation with all the other candidates to say, well, what is your plan? And Buttigieg was like, well, a licensing program, which honestly, to me, doesn't seem all that bold.
So let me jump in and just kind of give you guys, in case you missed it in previous stories, some context into how Buttigieg operates and what his philosophy is when it comes to policy. So he has been very, I think, forthcoming about how he does not believe it makes sense to outline specific policy proposals. He believes that you should run on values. And I think that that's a bad idea. I think that's a flawed way of thinking about this election, and it's a weakness that I think was demonstrated in the answer to that question.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcasts.